That's not working. I'll have to use the mouse. Okay, let me go ahead and get started. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, my name is Robert Wells. I'm from here in Gastonia. Actually, I only live a few blocks back behind the museum here. And okay, I've been working with genealogy for, actually this month will be 9 years. And then coming up in May was the first DNA test I had, and it was a Y chromosome test. We'll get into those later. And but I've got family ties into Gaston, Lincoln, and Cleveland, and Catawba, Yadkin, Surrey, Cumberland, Mecklenburg, and York County in South Carolina. And the reason I got into genealogy was to just prove some family stories. Well, I'd always wanted to know my family history anyway, but see, my last name is Wells, like the bank, but my father and uncles had always told us that their grandfathers was born out of wedlock and his father's last name was Thornburg. And I really didn't believe those stories because there's a bunch of wild stories that were associated with it. So I really started doing the genealogy and DNA to disprove that. And come find out I was wrong and they were right. So, and I'm not going to go into that story because you could have almost a week-long presentation on the Thornburgs. But I'll just give you just a rundown of some of the stories they had. My great-grandfather's half-brothers burned a York County Sheriff's barn down in September of 1884 because they were running from him and they burned his barn down to distract him. So, and that was one of the stories we had, and I was able to prove that. It was in the newspaper and all the criminal records too. Okay, what we'll cover here, I'll just go over why we should test and who you should test. If you've taken a DNA test, if you've got other family members, there's other ones you should test. And I'll go over those in a few minutes, what that is. I'll go over the different types of DNA companies, and then at the end I'll just show you a brief breakdown of what I've discovered. That's in the end of this hour. And in the second half, I'll go into details and show you how I was able to prove the different relationships of the DNA. Because in this hour here, I'm not going to go into the minute details. I'm just going to kind of go an overview. And also, too, I forgot to mention one thing. What I'll do, I'll stop to take questions or maybe at the end. But I hate to ask you to raise your hand like we're in school, but what I'm doing, I'm recording this. And Brian back here has a microphone, and he'll bring it to you, because if you don't, I'll just be answering questions, and people will be watching the presentation later on the internet won't be able to hear your question. So he'll come over to the microphone with you. Okay, real quick in here, I just want to know who in here is taking a DNA test? Okay, and who in here wants to take a DNA test? Okay, I have them for sale back here for $79. I got them $20 cheaper than Ancestry has them. Okay, who in here don't have any interest in taking a test at all? Okay, I haven't had one of those yet. I wish I had of. So, okay. All right, let's move ahead to the next one. Okay, the reason why you should test, the biggest reason, if you're taking a DNA test, more likely you're a genealogy and you probably hit a brick wall like I have and still have. And they're good to help you break down brick walls. I'll give you a quick example of me. My second great-grandmother, Arnett, I was pretty sure she was born out of wedlock. And I was able to find a bastardy bond on her to show where she had been born out of wedlock. But I had her father listed, but all I had was a piece of paper that said who he was. And there's a possibility that may not be true. But with the DNA test, I was able to find 2 other people descendant from that man, and they did match my mother and her sister and one of her brothers pretty good. All right. Probably the biggest reason you want to take a genealogy test because you want to discover your true biological lines. There's a lot of bad information out there. right now with Ancestry and some of the, I'd say even Family Search, some of the trees not very well researched. And if you're going out there copying trees, you may be getting bad information. And you may even be getting bad information from your family, or even, I mean, you may have a grandfather that really was, or even a father or a mother, you never know. And also, I mean, it helps validate your research. And then identifying a misattributed parental event, you have to be careful with those. I've actually run across a couple of those, so you have to handle those with care. And also, the DNA is the future of genealogy, whether some people want to admit it or not. It is the future going forward. And I don't know if this will ever happen. I kind of wish it would, but some of your, I would hope that in the future, some of your organizations that are like the daughters of the American Revolution, the sons and the daughters and sons of Confederate veterans and the organizations like that, hopefully they'll start requiring that, because there may, you know, because I've seen some of the genealogy that wasn't really up to par, some of the things that I've seen. Okay, who should you test? I guess first you want to test yourself. If you got parents alive, most definitely test both of them. If you don't have a parent, maybe an aunt or an uncle. And see, that way what you're doing, you're not getting in other people's genes. For example, I've got my sister's son testing, you know, my nephew, you know, his father's genes. His father's not being related to me. That, well, it would help me some, but you see there's some clutter in there from another line. So if you get like a sibling or aunt or an uncle on either side of the family, and siblings, if you know, maybe you don't have parents or grandparents with us anymore, you do siblings. First cousins will work, but then again, you've got the other person that's not related to you in there. And the first thing you want to do is get the oldest relative closer to the source. I mean, I know I've got a friend of mine that's 101, and he's not related to me, but if somebody in his family will get a DNA test, I'd say go test Oscar. He's 101. He's he's a lot closer to the source. So that's really, you want to get close to the source as possible. Okay, DNA is not a magic wand. If you say if you just got your test, maybe at Christmas, maybe, well, I doubt you've got the results back yet, but if you just got your results back, you probably, you know, you had your ethnicity estimates, and then you had all these matches. Well, you've got to go work with those matches. They don't really, they're not going to jump out and do it for you. I mean, you do have some things help you out with the hints and some of the other advanced tools we'll go into in the next hour. But yeah, you do have to work those. It won't do it for you. And it, well, it complements your research, validates it. And then the DNA doesn't have to worry about burnt courthouses or church. I've ran into that a lot researching. You know, a courthouse burned, a record don't exist anymore. And I've got a lot of people telling me church burned, whether they did or not. But and it's not subjected to incorrect documents. I mean, you probably, before you got into genealogy, you may have thought public records were all accurate. Or if you were in the genealogy more than a week, you found out that's probably not true, especially death certificates. And it's not subjected to incorrect stories. Y'all have heard stories about being related to somebody famous, George Washington, Charlemagne, or something like that. And you know, you do your DNA, you more likely find out you're probably not. You may be related to bootleggers and moonshiners, so like I am. Okay. All right. Some of the disadvantages is, well, it's not a magic wand. You've got to work with it. You can reveal unwanted information. I've seen on Facebook posts and some of the groups I monitor, people get their test done and they'll have the father and mother tested. And I'll probably see it a couple of times a week. Well, my father's not matching me. And I had a girl asking me questions, and I sent her a copy of something we'll get into later, something called centimorgans. It's the measurement you use. I sent her that kind of defines relationships, and let her make that decision on her own. I wasn't going to say he's not your father, you know, and that's something you may want to, you have to be careful with that. Another, well, I'll give you an example of what happened to me last April. 23andMe had the test cheap, and I really hadn't even planned on getting 23andMe, but I said, well, I'll go ahead and get it in case somebody needs some help with it. Well, 2 weeks after my results come back, I get a I get a match that come up really close, like a second cousin or first cousin once removed. And I'd already identified a lot of my common matches on 23andMe and was able to pinpoint this guy to my grandparents on my mother's side. But I didn't know who he was because I don't have a lot of cousins over there. I know who they are and their children. So I sent him a message and gave him the surnames. And he come back and asked me if I knew and the name he gave me was my first cousin that died back in 2007. I said, well, yeah. And I replied, that's my first cousin. And he's, oh, well, my grandfather told me that he was really my father when I was 16. So, well, I'll cut that story short, but my uncle only thought he had a granddaughter and found out last April he has a grandson. So they've met, he's met his half sister, and it all turned out good. But in this case, it turned out good there, but you gotta be careful with those because sometimes they don't. And another disadvantage of DNA, it can disprove years of genealogical research. So don't be afraid of that because it's real easy in genealogy to if you misidentify one person, everything else after that's wrong. So if you did do that, I know it because I've done that before, and you're like, oh man, I got to cut all this out and go redo it. But I mean, you want it to be accurate because, you want it to be accurate for future generations because there's a lot of bad trees bouncing around out there, and I'm afraid that we're going to have a lot of bad information going in the future. Now, the one thing I always say, if you're afraid of skeletons, don't go in the DNA closet because you never know what might turn up. And it is still slightly a new science, so there's still some more work to be done on it. I'm not going to go to a biology lesson, just real quick, give you an idea where DNA is located. You just have a cell here, and inside the cell is a nucleus, and in the nucleus you have your chromosomes. And then that's the actual, what's called the helix, double helix. That's actually inside the chromosome. So that, just a real quick breakdown. I'm not going to go into a biology lesson, which I'm not a biologist. I'm a computer software developer, so I know just enough about a cell to tell you about it. The main types of DNA tests, if you're a male, you can take a Y chromosome test, and that'll give you a path going back a few thousand years to where your direct male line come from. And if that's one test, if a man comes to me and says he's been adopted, that's the first test I'd recommend he'd take. That way at least he'd get an idea of his true biological surname. And then if you're being a female, if you've got a brother or maybe you've got a male cousin down like your father's line, he's going to have the same Y chromosome. So you could always get that, a male relative tested there because you're only looking at one specific part of the DNA, so there's nothing else coming in to affect that. The autosomal checks all 23 chromosomes. Anyone can take that. And then the mitochondrial, that is passed down the female line. Now, for example, me, I have my mother's mitochondrial DNA, but I have all sons. They don't have the mitochondrial DNA I have. They have the mitochondrial from my wife back there. So when they have children, if they her mitochondrial stops here, they have children, whoever the wives are, that's where the mitochondrial DNA will come in from them. So it's passed directly down the female line. I'll show you an example of that in just a few minutes. Y-DNA tests, you got different levels, resolution. You can see the numbers here going from 12 to 111 and then the big Y. I wouldn't waste my time with the 12 or even the 25. 37 is okay. I'd go at least 67 or higher. That'll give you more resolution. And the 111, I think, maybe around $200 and something now. Now the big Y, it's on up there. So that's not really necessary unless you really want to get serious about it. And this is just a quick, I'm not going to go over this map completely, but it just shows you the migration paths of the different, the Y chromosomes are divided up in what's called haplogroups. For example, mine, the base haplogroup of mine is R1b, which is the predominant one in Europe, and it is in a couple other places. But you just get your different, what gives you a good indication of where like your direct male line came from. Like with the Q is, you know, the native people here, and then you have some of your, like with your E's come out of Africa, and there's a difference between the ones in northern Africa and down here in the sub-Sahara. So they'll just give you an idea of an origin. Okay, the mitochondrial DNA, males or females can take that. It just comes direct down the maternal line, and only females pass that. It'll give you deep ancestry up for 30,000 years, but so it's not really that useful for genealogical research. Like for example, if you share a common, you can have a common ancestor going back 22 generations. So, and well, they estimate that's around 550 years. So it'll just kind of give you an origin. It is just another thing. The mitochondrial is broke down into haplogroups. So you can see some of these like here in the Americas, and they're like, my haplogroup is H for my mother. So it just gives you an origin of kind of where your female relative come from. I show the X here, but you see X is kind of odd. It kind of bounces around. That's kind of a mystery. Okay. This is just a quick showing of how the different types of DNA are inherited. If you see down the parental line here, you can see how the Y chromosome comes down to our modern, today with the male, and then in the outline, the brown here is represents the mitochondrial, the brown. And then one thing you want to look at too, see how the X chromosome, because if you didn't know, I mean, males have an X and a Y chromosome, and females have two X chromosomes. If you notice, the female gets a copy from each parent, but now a male child will get what's called a recombined from the mother. You don't get an X chromosome from the father, because you notice the two, I got them in black and yellow, how they're recombined here. So that's how that's inherited. The autosomal, anybody can take, did I go backwards? No, I didn't. Okay. The autosomal, males and females take that, test all 23 of the chromosome. Good for around 7 to 8 generations, and it helps you identify your other biological lines with your different cousins you'll have. And it has ethnicity estimates, and that's about all they are estimates. This is just a real rudimentary breakdown of how autosomal is passed. I'll try to explain how I did this. If you notice, I've got 8 blocks here of this person, and they're all one color. Now, if you can see only, and this is randomized, it's not, it don't go in and cut off half of the DNA and stick it in there. It randomizes it through all of this and passes it to the next generation. As you can see how the colors here, and then if you get to the next generation, you get the different colors are passed down till you get to, I'd say today is what I'm referring to here. Then it comes same from the other side. So now see, all this DNA is randomly passed. So what I mean by that, just real easy example, you see the kind of purple color here come from this ancestor? Well, you've got all this other DNA that this ancestor had that you didn't get. But now different children get different pieces of DNA that get passed. So more than likely, this same DNA that you got, somebody that's, and this would be great-grandparents level, second cousin or something is going to have a piece of DNA that you had that you'll match up with, because it is random. It just doesn't, because if it did go in and just grab half and half, you could have a sister or brother you might not even show relation to. So, but it is random. Okay, these are the 4. There's a lot of other DNA companies out there. These are the 4 major ones that's got databases of any significance. I just recommend staying with these just because of the sheer numbers. And there's a lot of places out there that are free that are uploading, and you don't really know how good their algorithms are. And they're really just gathering information to sell for medical research. So, which all these companies sell it for medical research anyway, and I don't really care. But And you got it's Ancestry, FamilyTreeDNA, 23andMe, and MyHeritage, if you haven't heard of those. I'll just give you some quick pros and cons of the different ones. Ancestry DNA has, it has family trees that are linked to your DNA profile. Like, for instance, me, I've got all the aunts and uncles on both sides of my family and my parents tested, and see all their DNA profiles are linked to my tree. So when someone matches them, say they don't match my father, they match one of his brothers or sisters, then I know that. Then you have multiple account tests under, well, okay, when I did this, it was still that way. I should have changed this. When you get a DNA test, you have to create an Ancestry account, but there's a way around that. You can have a main account and share the results as a manager, and it'll show up under your profile. So you can technically still have multiple tests under one account. You've got access to public records over there. You got shared matches, and the interface is pretty friendly to use. You can download your raw DNA data from Ancestry to upload to other companies, but Ancestry doesn't allow raw data into their system. Okay. Ancestry has a shared match feature, which you've got a person you match with. There's a link in there, shared matches. You can go through and see all the other people that are common relation. And then they have ethnicity estimates. And Ancestry has the largest database. They're claiming 20 million people right now. So, and some of the cons with Ancestry is that you can't download your match data directly from Ancestry. There are other ways to do that, but it doesn't allow you to download the data directly. And they don't have a chromosome browser, which if you don't know what that is, that's really beyond the scope of this presentation. I'll go into it in the next hour in the advanced. But right now, for now, Ancestry doesn't have that. They've claimed they've got some big surprises coming this year, and I hope they do have a chromosome browser, because they are starting to get behind the curve. All right, the folly of ethnicity estimates. All right, ethnicity estimates, don't take them too seriously, and I'll show you why. I've been tested in all the 4 major companies, and I've got my parents and some, not on all of them, but I've got over on MyHeritage and Ancestry, I've got my parents and aunts and uncles, and I'll show you why the ethnicity estimates are not to be taken too seriously. And they widely vary sometimes between the companies too. And I'd say the ethnicity estimate is probably only accurate to the continent level. You know, say a person comes from Scotland or England, it's kind of like saying we're from, you know, I can pinpoint whether you're from North or South Carolina, good luck, okay? And the trace regions, don't take those too seriously. If you go in there and read the fine print, they'll tell you they're guessing at the trace regions anyway. And if you got a DNA test just for the ethnicity estimates, I'd say you wasted your money. Okay, give you an example. Here's me and my parents. Okay, if you look here, I am showing Sweden and Portugal, but where are they over here? Okay. And they are my parents because I have them on company, so you know the actual numbers are there. So, okay. I go with Family Tree. One good thing about the FamilyTreeDNA company is they do all the tests, the Y chromosome, Autosomal, Mitochondrial, and they've also got other tests too that you can do, called some SNP tests, but I'm not going to go into what that is right now. They have a chromosome browser, and you can download your raw data and your match data, and they do allow transfers from other companies. And some of their cons are their ethnicity estimates to me are really flawed, and I'll show you why in a minute. And the trees over there, to me the trees are not really that useful. They're hard to navigate, and they don't really have any access to public records. And all right, their user interface has improved over the last few months, but it still needs some work. And you can only do one test per account. Like, for example, I have to log in. When I log in as me, I have to log in under a kit number. If I want to go look at my mother or father, I got to log in under a different kit number. I can't see all that while I'm in there. All right, here's an example of well, this is my first family tree DNA ethnicity estimate. And you can see, and then we'll go look at the new one. It's different, which is not really worried about that. But if you look at this one, you can see my parents here. They have these different trace regions. And then I've got this 6% Scandinavian, but where is it over here? So, all right, 23andMe is, well, they do allow linking to two family trees, but you got to paste your URL from your tree into it, and you have to go log into Ancestry, and you actually got to get the link to your tree, because I've been over there and clicked on people's link, and it just goes to Ancestry. They just put Ancestry.com. They don't put the full link to their tree. So they do provide health information, whether that's accurate or not. I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not really into this for that, but they do have ethnicity estimates, and they do have a chromosome browser, which their chromosome browser is kind of clunky and hard to use. You got to do a lot of extra work to get it to work, and they do have raw data downloads. They currently, right now, as far as I know, don't allow other companies to upload. They did one day last year, but okay, cons of that. Like I said before, if you got a link to a tree, you have to be logged in over on the other system to go to it. So it's not really a direct link. They don't have any public records, and to me, their web interface needs some improvement. And you only do one test per account. So it's, to me, 23andMe is not really that useful for genealogical research. I mean, you know, you can go use a chromosome browser. That's probably about the best feature they have. And I can't really give you an example because I didn't bother to put my parents on 23andMe, but you can come over here and look. Well, they're not too much different than some of the other companies, but I don't really have anything to compare this to, so I can't give you a full breakdown on that. Okay, MyHeritage. Okay, I'd say about a year ago, I would have told you don't waste your time, but today, it's a whole different story. MyHeritage has really improved greatly, and they've got some features coming up in the future too, where if Ancestry don't get their act together, if a lot of people start migrating over there, they're already ahead of Ancestry with the tools. They just don't have the numbers of the test yet. If they had the numbers of the test, Ancestry would have a problem. Yeah, their trees to me are pretty easy to navigate, and the DNA matches and just the overall DNA profile, they've improved that a lot. It's pretty user friendly, and you can have more than one DNA test on the account. I mean, it's like Ancestry. You've got a drop down list. You just go pick another DNA account and go look at it. You have to go log in, log out, log back in, and then you don't have your two things close together and where you can compare them. So, and they do have a chromosome browser is pretty good. It's not pretty good. It's actually great compared to the other companies. And they've also well, I'll use the term now and I'll explain what this is in the next hour. They do some automatic triangulation, which is a really good feature. And well, they have what they call smart matches, which is kind of the same thing as shared matches over in Ancestry, which they do take theirs one step further. And I did mention before, they do some automatic triangulation. To me right now, the only con about MyHeritage, their database is small. So that may change in the future. I'll just give you an example of the ethnicity estimates between me and my parents. And you can see not really, well, see, I got a really high number. See, this is an example of going between the companies. You noticed over on, I had a 6% Scandinavian over on FamilyTreeDNA. It don't even exist in my parents. I got a really high number here of 30%. The old Ancestry estimates had me at 14% before they changed their algorithm a few months back. So, and also too, here's the problem with that. If you look at my mother showing 25.9% Scandinavian, trying to look over here, I don't see no more Scandinavian with my father. So I'm showing a higher percentage than my mother, but I don't have any on my father's side to contribute. So, that's that's a little bit off, I'd say. And if you look at the, now, because see, my mother's side of the family, she's a Williams. And that pretty much that whole, well, they're Welsh. And if you track that back to when they come over, it was down on the coast for a while to move more inland. A lot of those people stayed together. So, I mean, only Scandinavian I think she would have would probably be from the Viking invasions, if that still exists. That was so long ago. So, all right, real quick. And these numbers may be a little bit higher because I did these as of back in September. So I'd say they're a little bit higher on the Christmas sales that they had. But just showing you the differences in what's between the companies. Like MyHeritage DNA is, they're way down there. But yeah, I need to update these numbers. I just couldn't really find good information on them. But still, you may be looking at 1 million or 2 more people. But see, MyHeritage, that's why I'd say you can upload your matches over there. Well, they said they were going to start charging. I looked last night, and they're still not charging for raw data upload. So I'd suggest a lot of people get over and get their numbers up because their tools are a lot better. And if they're coming out with, watched a conference over the internet, they're coming out with something called mass triangulation this year. And if they do that, that's really going to help out a lot. I'll just give you an example of what you should do to save yourself some money. If you've already taken your Ancestry DNA test, you can, there's a way you can download your raw data, and you can upload it to FamilyTree for $19, and you'll get your matches and your ethnicity estimate over there. And you can upload to MyHeritage for free. So you only spend, $99 is what the test is going for now. So that'd be about $118 versus if you go pay outright for all these tests, you'll end up spending $237 plus shipping. So I always say if you've already taken an Ancestry test, download your raw DNA data, and that way you can upload it to the other companies. All right. I'll just quickly go over what I have discovered, and I'll give you a quick overview of that, and then in the next hour when we'll go into the details, show you how I did it. But I was able to discover what my true male line is. It's not Wells. It is Thornburg. Actually, Thornburg's from out of Gaston, Lincoln County. And I'd proved that my second great-grandmother had a child by her sister's husband. And I had proved that my great-uncle William Thornburg had fathered a child while he was hiding from the law. And I'll go more in detail why that's significant. And I know you may not think this is very significant right here, but I said discovered my Williams line. Well, if you've got Williams, Smith, Jones, or Johnson, you know what I'm talking about. So now I had my second great grandfather was named James Williams, and there were 5 James Williams in Union County. So I had a real hard time. Without DNA, I did find some records that kind of proved it, but without DNA, I still wouldn't have put a stamp of approval on it. So, and also that my uncle, I'll show you how my uncle is, Donald, is related to my wife. So, but me and her don't share any common DNA. And so she's back there telling me not to tell that story. But we have a common Yunt ancestor out of Catawba County. But it goes back to like maybe 7th great-grandparent generation. So my wife and father don't share any common DNA, but she does share some with a couple of my uncles and one of my aunts. And so that was another good example of how I followed that Yunt line, and there was some some things in there that were not really apparent. And even with my wife, we've got one father that we haven't really been able to figure out yet. But now we do know based on between the two Yunts that common man Yunt is our ancestor. We just got to put some pieces in between. All right, real quick, this was my great-grandfather. When he was born, we're not sure if he went by his mother's last name of Camp or if he went by his real father's last name of Thornburg. We're not really sure. We don't really have any records. I've just got a lot of stories, and then I've got a lot of other stories around to prove that, and I'll show you how I did that in the next hours. We won't get through this one. And I was able to prove that with AtDNA and Autosomal and a paper trail. So see, that's one thing you want to keep in mind with DNA. It's just something to complement your paper trail. It's not going to allow you to just forget about doing all that research. So you're still going to have to occasionally go to the courthouse and look through some old musty records and go to the state archives. But this will really a way to help prove what you've done even more. Just a real quick breakdown of my great-grandfather's paper trail. His father was listed in the family Bible as Lawson Wells. Obituary listed his father as Lawson Wells. 1900 census listed his father as Lawson Wells. But now he was listed as a stepchild in this man Lawson Wells' obituary. That was kind of the only really piece of paper I had that contradicted what, based on the records, that his father was really showing him as the man Lawson Wells and not Joseph Thornburg. And when I took the Y chromosome test, I got Thornburg matches back. There is a Wells DNA project. I sent them the marker numbers, and I got a short reply back from him. You do not match these people. So, and these people here are known descendants of my great-grandfather Wells' true father, Joseph Thornburg. This man here is a descent. Joseph Thornburg has an older family before my great-grandfather was born, and he had two sons who were identical twins. This man here descends from one of the identical twins named William, and this man here descends from his brother Daniel, and then this one descends from another son named Joseph Larkin, and then this man here descends from one of Joseph Thornburg's daughters from his other wife. Okay. And one way that I was able, see, my second great-grandmother, Mary Camp, some of the sons of Joseph Thornburg were around her age. So I wasn't really sure if the old man fathered my great-grandfather or one of those boys did, which they were young men in their 20s. That was more what I was thinking about, not this man that was 60. But how I discovered that it was the old man is that his wife's last name was Summy. And I have yet, in my aunts and uncle's father, find any relationship to that family Summy. So that tells me that the old man did father my great-grandfather. This is my second great-grandmother, Mary Camp, and she's holding one of her grandchildren. I think it's probably taken around 1915 down in Rock Hill. But her father was in question too. That was one thing that I was having some problems with, because her father was killed in June of 1862 at the Battle of, what was the name of that battle? Gaines Mill up in Virginia in 1862. All of her records, except for the 1880 census, showed her being, the 1870 census showed her being born in 1862. All the other records are all over the place, 1864, 65, 66. So she was born anytime after, I'd say around anytime after August, September of 1862. She didn't belong to what all the records said her father was. But I was able to, with DNA, prove that she was truly a Camp. Her mother was pregnant when her father went off to war. And then I also was able to prove she had a sister, child by her sister's husband. But like I said before, here's her paper trail. Her father was killed in 1862. Death certificate said birth year is 1865, and as you can see, the census, different census records here, got her birthday all over the place. But also, she had another daughter. This girl was older than my great-grandfather's, my great-grandfather's sister, which we know to be his half-sister now. This same Thornburg story came through that family, and then I was contacted a couple of years ago, and 3 siblings had taken DNA tests. Now they matched us, but they matched my father and his brothers and sisters, but they are second cousins, but they were showing more closer to a fourth cousin on all the DNA numbers. And not matching any of the people with the Thornburgs, because I've got a lot of those matches. They didn't match any of them. But this name here kept popping up in their matches. And I started looking, I'm like, well, this name sounds familiar because it's been a few years since I'd researched that. And then it hit me one day. I said, no, wait a minute. Her sister's husband had this last name. This man here worked for Joseph Thornburg in his distillery down in York. Even got records where he was arrested with Joseph Thornburg. And also another thing that I did, I went down the female line, the spouses of this direct male line, McCullough, and they were matching all the grandmothers too. So, so that's how I was able to come, well, to a partial conclusion. I couldn't say 100%, but it does look like she had a child by her sister's husband. Okay, this is William Thornburg, one of the twins that caused a lot of trouble. They don't really know for sure which one of them shot a guy up in Dallas, well, up near Cherryville back in 1888. But now him and his brother were running around for a while. They did capture his brother for a little while, and he got away. But this girl here, his daughter, was conceived around December 1888, and him and his brother was running from the law. So I thought, well, I don't really think he was probably the father, because he did end up, I do know he was in Missouri and he did end up in Montana. But I did get some matches about a year ago of people from this lady here. Got some good matches between my dad and his brothers and sisters. So he did, it appears that he did father that child while he was running. But he ended up in Montana, and that's where he lived out the rest of his life. These are my second great grandparent Williams, James Williams and Millie Newell, out of Mecklenburg County. This is one of the most difficult lines that I was able to find. And but Williams being one of the most popular names in the United States, pretty difficult. And without DNA, I mean, I have some good paper records, but there was still some uncertainty. But I have been able, a lot of the DNA tests, I've done some triangulation, and then I have a lot of people that go back to his father, and because his father was killed at Sharpsburg, I believe it was called. Well, I'm sorry, he wasn't killed, he died of disease. But, and then his grandfather, I'm able to find a lot of matches going back to that. So, but yeah, without DNA, I'd still be wondering who this was. But I've got a good paper trail on them too. All right, I'll go over real quick how my wife's related to my uncle. See, my great-grandmother was Sally Yunt, and she was from Catawba County. And my wife's grandmother was Lucille Yunt, and their family was also around Catawba County also. Both lines have this same common last name in it too. But our common ancestor is Hans George Yunt. He's like a shared seventh great-grandfather. But my wife and my father don't have any shared DNA segments, so obviously me and her don't. But this is her, and this is my Uncle Donald. And they share about 15.2 centimorgans across one DNA segment. And then, actually this is, and I'll go over what this is in the next class. But here's two of my uncles. These guys are actually twins, not identical twins, but there's my Uncle Donald and one of my aunts on my father's side. And as you can see, you've got some like 26.2, 25, and 25, and 21 centimorgans, and I'll explain what those are later, of shared DNA. And see, even this one here is showing a little bit more than Ancestry is showing, but you can see how the segments line up. So, yeah, we obviously have a common Yunt ancestor. All right, this is my contact information, and it should be on the paper that you got. So, all right, I went over a few minutes. I was wanting to give a 15-minute break between the two classes, just give you a time to get up and move around. And because I know me, I don't like to sit still very long. But all right, anybody got any questions? Before you ask a question, I'll need Brian to bring the microphone over to you, so that, because I'm recording this. I'll be putting this presentation up on the internet with the recording. You'll not see my face. You'll just see the slides with the audio. But it'll probably be up there tomorrow, because it'll take me a little while to process the video. So, yes.
This is scary.
You're not going to hear
Is it
yourself.
on?
It's
Okay.
just
Oh,
come
okay.
onto my computer.
So my dad is adopted, and we don't have any information on his family.
Okay.
So do you have any direction that you could give us about? He just did a DNA test. We haven't gotten the results back yet.
Okay.
So, do you have any guidance about that?
Yeah, is your mother still living?
Yes.
Okay. Have you tested her yet?
No.
Okay. You want to test her because what they'll allow you to do, it'll allow you to separate each side with your shared matches. And you'll only see the matches between your mother and father. Now, what test did you get him, like Ancestry?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You want to contact FamilyTreeDNA and get a Y chromosome test too. That'll give you a link to his surname. And yeah, cut the mark. Okay. I'll give you a link to his surname, and that way that'll narrow it down too. Another way you want to go to, I don't really know a lot about doing adoptions. I've just helped people with DNA, but you may want to research too, and I know here at the library they may be able to help you with that. There are ways that you can get records unsealed, but I don't really know how it is in North Carolina. I do know of a lady got her records unsealed in North Carolina, but people here that work with genealogy probably help you out better with because if you get the records unsealed, you may be able to find out the names, but if not, I'd at least get the Y chromosome test and your mother. And have you tested yourself?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, if you get your mother, you could get it done, but if you get your mother and father tested, that's all the DNA you've got anyway. I never even look at my test anymore. Or is there anybody else? I hate doing it like school, but I want to get your voices on here. So.
I have a brother who is 10 years older than me. If he does the Ancestry DNA test, is it going to come back exactly like mine did?
No. If you remember the one big block diagram I had, see, you inherit 50% of your mother's DNA and 50% of your father's. So each sibling does, but it's randomized. So say he's going to pick up DNA. He'll have DNA from your mother and father that you don't have, and vice versa. So it's because see, if you think about it, you got 50% from your father and 50% from your mother. There's another 50% from each that you don't have. So, but it is randomized. It's not just cut off in little blocks and handed over and you can point to it. It's a random thing. Or is there anyone else?
I'm searching for my father, and if it's who I think it is, he's deceased. Is there anything I can do? I mean, I can't pull him up out of the grave.
Do you know if he has any other siblings or children?
I can't find anyone. I am at a distraught.
Do you have a brother?
I can't find a brother or sister or anything.
Okay, so you, as far as you know, you're an only child. I mean,
As far as I know, I would be an only child.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the only thing I can tell you there is you'd have to test yourself. It's going to be a little bit of work to figure that one out. Yeah, it's a little bit of work. Now, but you don't know of maybe anybody that you think might be his brother or sister or, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, you'll have a little bit of work ahead of you. Don't give up right away, because what happens is people are testing every day, and you may go and look at your results one day and have a first cousin match. And if you can get a first cousin match, help you narrow that down some. If it's on your father's side, hopefully it wouldn't be on.
I just need to go to one of those sites and put my DNA. I got it from, I think it was 23andMe that did it. It's
Yeah.
for a year.
Yeah, I would recommend going to Ancestry just because sheer numbers. They got 20 million people in their database, and then you can pull that. Now you can pull that DNA down and upload it to a couple other free sites, but now Ancestry's got 20 million people, so I would at least do that because that's just the numbers game. But good luck with that. Yeah, that makes it tough. All right, is there anyone else?
I'm a scientist and I grew my own chromosome. So I saw it under the microscope. I found out two important things. that I'm normal and I'm a woman. But I don't know anything else about myself.
Yeah.
Will you have a hard time finding out about my ancestry since I'm from the Philippines?
Oh, well, that's funny you asked that. I've got a sister-in-law that's from the Philippines. My brother had her DNA done, and they had changed. Well, I know if you look at ethnicity estimates anyway, they radically changed in the last algorithm change. Originally, when she had hers done, it was showing that she was about, well, they showed China and Japan. They kind of looked at it as the same, and they showed she was about half that, and about maybe another 40% around India, Indian subcontinent, and a little bit from Melanesian islands. Now our ethnicity estimates mainly show the Philippines, so they've brought it closer in, but that's the only thing I could tell you with that. But I mean, how long you not been in the country long?
Here?
Yeah.
I've been here more than I've been in the Philippines.
Yeah, but your father and mother's from the Philippines.
Yes.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't get many matches if you took the test, because Ancestry looks at the United States, and you may find some people here that's related to you, maybe had migrated other times, but yeah, in your case, you probably wouldn't get a lot of matches. See, my family lines go way back, so a lot of them before the Revolution. My father and mother have so many matches, I can't keep up with them. But now, like my sister-in-law had her test done, she don't have many matches. She probably only has 2 or 3 pages of matches, to where my father, I think my father's got nearly 10,000. And
Well, you know, my maiden name is Lorenzo.
yeah,
That's Spanish.
yeah.
We were conquered by the Spaniards years ago.
Well, you may be able to see if you got European DNA. My sister-in-law doesn't have any European DNA in her, but I mean, it may be able to tell you whether. But that's going back a ways. It may or may not show up as far back as that goes. So, yeah, it may not help you much with that. The only thing that works, if you've got descendants here over the next couple hundred years, that if they lose track of you, they may be able to tell the grandmother came, great grandmother, whatever, came from the Philippines. So, yeah. Or is anybody else? All right. Okay, we'll go ahead and this will be it. This is my contact information, my website. If you want me to help you out some, just send me an email. And I've got some videos out there too. Like with downloading your raw DNA, I've got a video that shows you how to do that from Ancestry. And then there's some other videos out there too you can check out. So we're running up against the next hour. I still want to take a few minute break. I don't want to go straight into the next one. So that way you can take a look at some of it. I have a flash drive back here that I've got videos on. I'm selling training videos. And if any of you want a DNA test, I got them for $20 cheaper than Ancestry.